Hey everybody, this is Defense Mech, and I wanted to do something a little different and talk about how I'm setting up Reaper to make MIDIs. And I'm taking a lot of info from this post and another one as well. This one has some very good information in it. I've created a template, but I also wanted to kind of go through and show you how I set this up like from scratch, so that you can see the settings that I'm actually using. So kind of skip ahead here to preliminary steps. First, if you haven't already done so, install the following: SWS extension and repack. And you will definitely need repack, although I'm not entirely certain that SWS extension is required. You might get an error when you load the template that I've created. You can just ignore it. I was using this to make the tracks different colors. I'll show you the template here. So we've got this MIDI output track, we've got a setup track, and then we've got MIDI tracks 1 through 16. And you can see here I've got some setup, we've got instruments listed, and then we've got these MIDI items. So this is just kind of the very basic version of this template, but in order to actually make some music, you're going to need to set some other things up, and I haven't done that here yet. I basically have this set up from scratch, so nothing has been modified. So I wanted to kind of go ahead and walk through how this is done. So you will need repack, so let's click this. We will get the Windows version, certainly get the version that's appropriate for your platform. And then we have to figure out how to use this. I think it goes in the Reaper plugins folder, although I see the user guide for installation instructions. So installation, show Reaper resource path, put the downloaded file in the user plugin subdirectory, and restart Reaper. So, okay, where is that? From Reaper options. Okay. Show Reaper resource path. So we can go over to the downloads, grab this, copy from here, paste. Oh wait, where does it go? User plugins? Yeah, it goes in the user plugins folder. So we go here, paste this, and then we will restart Reaper. I don't think there's a way that I can do that without. Okay. Let's go ahead and save it. I don't think it matters. Reaper. Bring up Reaper. Okay, this seems like it should be okay. We've got some notes here, but I'll come back to these later a little bit because I want to go through the steps in this blog post. All right, so we've got repack. So they want to talk about the action list and the MIDI editor, and they talk about how the MIDI editor is kind of annoying. And so like if you double click on this by default, actually, oh, interesting. Maybe these options already got set. Basically you're going to want to set this up, or at least I did, such that there's one MIDI editor per project, right? So normally, I think it's here it is. So you've got normally every time you click on a MIDI take, and you could certainly work this way if you wanted to, there's nothing wrong with it. But I just find this to be cumbersome to have to deal with all these different tabs. Oh yeah, another thing I should mention, you can click on this tab and drag it. I'm holding the mouse button down, and you can drag it around and either detach this from the window, or like I prefer doing is docking it to this side. Okay, but let's say we don't want this. We want to close it out. Because I was going to show you, I like to have this one MIDI editor per project. And I will say, see, behavior for open items and built-in MIDI editor. I don't really have a preference for this. But when using one MIDI editor per project, active MIDI item follows selection changes in a range view. I'm going to click this. Media item selection is linked to visibility. I'm going to click this. Selection is linked to editability. I'm going to click this. Close editor when the active item is deleted in the range view. I'm going to unclick that because I want the MIDI editor to stay open. Avoid automatically setting MIDI items from other tracks editable. Yeah, probably. And you can always come back and change these, but the thing I like about this, and this is explained in the post, is that whatever you click on here, you'll be able to see if my window will cooperate here. MIDI 1. And we click here, MIDI 2. Click here, MIDI 3. So now you can just click on these and their contents, if there are any. We can go ahead and put some notes in, just kind of double click, put some stuff in. So now we click here, we've got some different stuff here. And you can click between those and we've got that set. Okay, so that's great. And let's go back to this post a little bit. So this is the behavior that we're matching here. The MIDI editor is open with a keystroke. Only one MIDI editor is open at a time. The MIDI items that are visible in the MIDI editor mirror the items in a range view. By default, first item is the active item. So you can actually select this one and then I can hold shift and select this one, or rather, sorry, it is control. And now we can see both of these, but only this one is active. And then within the MIDI editor, several shortcuts allow cycling. So this is something that we'll set up a little bit later. So he's got this already kind of set up, and you can follow these, or you don't have to. But yeah, behavior for open all selected. Okay. So he says this change is the most important one MIDI editor per project. I already kind of talked about that. Setting up basic MIDI editor actions. Okay, so he's got one for view, toggle, show MIDI editor window, but and then switching active MIDI items. You basically, here are a couple things that will help you. So you can go into actions and show action list. And while you're up here, you can do this. Active MIDI. Yeah, that's not it. Okay. Activate previous visible MIDI item, or activate. Okay, that's what it is. Visible MIDI. Nope, not in there. Okay, I think this might be an SWS thing. So let's go install the SWS extension and come back and see if that's what that is. Okay, so I'm gonna get the 64 version for Windows. Install this. It's gonna tell me that the Reaper is open probably. So do I want to? Oops, not that. Do I want to save this? No. Okay, I agree. Okay, this is fine. Etc. Close. Can run Reaper again. All right. So part of the notes that I just explained were these MIDI editor settings. So you double click. This is one thing you gotta remember is it doesn't open the MIDI editor by default. You have to double click. And then once you do that, it's fine. Okay. So let's try searching the action list for visible MIDI item. Nope, that's not what it is. This is kind of weird. So it might be over here, by the way. So there's, when you're searching for actions, make sure you go to the MIDI editor. Activate visible, next visible MIDI item, Alt N. Okay, there it is. So make sure that your section is MIDI editor. So, and then there are some other ones. So insert note at edit cursor is I, but you can also set insert note at mouse cursor. So let's see. Insert mouse. Insert node at mouse cursor is set to insert. You can map this to something else. What I have right now, I have it mapped to A. So now, boom. Oops. Make sure you have to click. But the default thing is it's gonna set you right to the grid. So This gets maybe a little bit annoying to switch between. Okay. So basically you can go through the action list and look up a couple of things like what to do with the, you can set your actions and basically map your own keyboard shortcuts to the different things in here, like, adding notes, deleting notes, or if you need to search for a shortcut, or like, you need to go, which button deletes, or which button, edit, copy, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so there's that. Let's do this. Let's go to our repack extension, and I want to browse some packages because these are some good ones that we're going to install. And these are named in here in this post. So let's go back down and talk about, I don't really care as much about the multi-lane. Oh yeah, there's a bunch of mouse modifiers in here that are great. Copy, control, and left drag, or you can also use right click and drag. Painting a straight line of notes, which is pretty cool. Erasing notes, stretching notes, adjusting note velocity, arpeggiating notes. And then here's some custom actions that he's got. Split notes at mouse cursor. Legato overlap, which this is a custom action that says make notes legato and then add one. Sorry for the glitches on the screen. Here's a SWS action. Toggle and hide all CC lanes except for lane under mouse cursor. Or set CC lane to, etc. So, and I'm going to skip the rearticulate because what I'm mostly talking about is the MIDI for like the Microsoft GS Wavetable synth or any other kind of external MIDI devices that you have, like maybe a Roland Sound Canvas, or there's a couple of VSTs that support sound fonts, etc. So I wanted to, let's see, mouse grid. So you can do adjust MIDI editor grid mouse wheel. This is a custom script from MPL, and I want to install this because I want to be able to adjust the MIDI grid with the mouse wheel. And mouse wheel only maps, you can increase or decrease grid size, but this mouse wheel, you can't do it with a mouse wheel by default. So let's apply this. Okay. So now, if we go to show action list and MIDI editor, adjust MIDI editor grid mouse wheel. So now we can, I don't know if we have to run this or if we have to actually map it to the, I think what we have to do is map it to like control mouse wheel basically. So this key is already mapped. So no, I don't actually want that because control mouse wheel is doing this kind of zooming, which I don't even really like that, but that's okay. So let's do like maybe alt mouse wheel. Now let's scroll horizontally. Let me check and see what I actually have it mapped as. Okay, so I actually have it mapped as alt shift mouse wheel. Whoop. Okay, so let's close out of this. Now when I have alt shift mouse wheel, it's still not working. I think it's probably not mapping this correctly in the virtual machine, but you should get the idea. So it should actually cycle through these different grids. And there are a bunch of other actions that you can get from here. So split note. You can do all of this kind of, let's see. Okay. Anyways, I want to talk about a couple of the other things before we kind of continue any further. I want to talk about the setup of this template a little bit. So each one of these tracks is mapped to a MIDI channel. The way that it works is basically when we are, I think it's set up here. Oh yeah. So first of all, I have these set set up to record as overdub or replace, which is why these MIDI items are here. Kind of expand this a little bit, throw this over to the side. So when you click on any of these and play, it will already assign itself to this channel. So our input, my input is all MIDI inputs. And then we're mapping the input to the channel of whatever this track is. So basically, your input device doesn't have to be on a certain channel. Likewise, I have something set up for each of these items. So if you go to the item properties, and then go to the source properties, send as channel 3. So if I go in here, let's say, and even if I put in some notes at the beginning of this MIDI item, right? And we go to the event list, you can see these are channel 1. But because I have this set, well, actually, this is channel 1. Let's go here and insert some more notes. Since this is on track 3, which is set to channel 3, these are still channel 1. And you can right click on these and set the channel to 3, and that's fine. But regardless, and you can see these are channel 1. There's some more notes up here too. But because this is set already to a certain channel, it doesn't really matter what channel you have the notes in here. So that's kind of nice. And that's why I set these to record MIDI overdub replace. You could certainly change this, but I only want one MIDI item for every track. I don't want it to keep adding new MIDI items in here and have like takes that I'm switching between. So whenever these tracks are going and I hit record, it just puts that, in this MIDI item. It will keep already what's in there. It won't replace anything. So if I want to record a few notes, it just puts it, in on top of this. Okay. So that's the same for all these. For some of this setup stuff. So I took this from this setup page. There's a setup measure that usually has a few of these messages, and this is I'll put all these links in the description, so if you want to go check this out in more detail, you can do that. And so there's some sysx messages in here. There's some other stuff, just kind of best practices. I think what I have for these, if you go, you can check out these when it says SYX, that's for sysx. So let's see. If we go to insert sysx event, I'm trying to think. Yeah, okay. So I don't have it. It doesn't save it in the template, but you can load and save different messages. Like if you want like the XG reset or the GS reset, because the Microsoft GS wavetable synth does respond to some GS commands like bank changes. So what you will want to, put that in here in the event list. And likewise, if I click here, there are this bank select command, and then there's this is setting the pitch bend range to 2. So you can see that here. And anytime you want, you can insert a program change. So it'll insert it wherever the cursor is at. So let's say I wanted to change from the rock organ to a different instrument. Go here, insert program change and bank select, go to general MIDI, and then you can select your program. It does require that you have this gm.rebank file. Sorry for this glitchy stuff. Which comes with Reaper by default. I will say that I think that the bank list, it starts with bank 121 for some reason, and I have a hardware MIDI keyboard and it really likes it better if I put this on bank 0. So you can, this is just a text file, so you can edit this, but let's say I want to put a xylophone change in here, then it'll change this to xylophone. So I do have these all, set up to just random instruments by default, but yeah, you can certainly change those. So solo this and solo this. So, or actually it should be organ. Yeah. So let's talk about something else. Let's talk about a couple other things. So all of these tracks are have this MIDI track control, and it's linking the track volume and pan to the same channel that it's on, which is great because it allows us to change the volume and the panning of the whole MIDI channel just with these track controls. The one bummer thing about that is that you can't just export the MIDI. So if you export this MIDI, let's say, you know, I pan this one left or whatever, and I pan this one right, or this one's not doing anything. I pan this one, let's pan it right. I don't actually have a mouse enabled on this. This is why this is weird. And then we want to make this, you know, a little bit lower. So, okay, beautiful. What you'll need to do when you're sort of done with this is to actually record. This is set to record output. So all of these volume and panning messages will actually record into this. So you basically, it's kind of like doing a render. And you can also, you know, press the V. If you select these tracks and press V, it'll open up volume envelopes, and you can set, you know, the volume envelope for each, you know, thing like this. You can also set, if you press P, the panning will come up, so you can actually, you know, automate these things, which is pretty cool. So when you're done and you've got your track ready, make sure you select this track only. You'll have to record this one, record arm it. I didn't set this one, but you certainly could set this to automatic record arm when track selected. So that way when you click off it, it won't. And then you've got to render, you've got to record here. And when it's done, you can save it. And then you can see all of our channel messages are here. All the notes are here. It is a little bit annoying because it puts everything on one track, but essentially when you go to bounce this, it's got all of the sysx stuff, and you can just hit export project MIDI, and I would say you could do time selection only, or you could do selected track only, or selected item only, which would probably be the best option. You could also just set the selection to that item, export project MIDI, and then I always embed project tempo time signature changes. I would choose multi-track 1. You can export project markers as MIDI, but I don't really have any markers in there other than that setup. So this setup bar has everything in it before the actual song starts. And then you kind of hit OK. It's gonna probably yell at me because I don't have the permissions to do that. So these are the basics, but I do want to cover now a couple other things. In the repack extension, when you go to browse packages, there are a couple of very cool mouse. What are they called? It's one of these in this post, which is so cool. It's called the Mouse Editing MultiTool. So let's go here, Mouse MultiTool. There's actually a couple of these. Okay, so let's search by this user, Julian Sader. So these do actually require you to install the Rescript API. The Rescript API. So you have to first install this. So let's apply that. And then we have to restart Reaper. So, okay. So let's get out of here. Actually, let's export our MIDI one more time, just so that we can kind of open it back up. And I'll just put this in. I don't actually know. Is there a folder that it will let me actually output to? Well, let's call it MIDI. It's probably going to yell that that doesn't exist. Okay. Okay, so here we go. C MIDI GM template. Okay. So well, let's X out of this. No, not save it. Let's load up Reaper again. Okay. And then let's go ahead and go to the packages, browse packages. So now let's. So there are a couple of these that I would like because first of all, I actually want the, let's see, there's an LFO tool. This one is insane. So you can basically automate things in CCs such as velocity CCs or panning CCs. So I want to install this one. There's MIDI editor versions. You know, there's a few different ones. You might have to kind of figure out which one. The mouse editing MultiTool is redonkulous. It is incredible. And then let's just let's go with just those for now and apply. Okay, so just to give you an idea of what this does. It's crazy. Let's change our grid. Quarter notes, maybe put in some quarter notes. So in our action list in the MIDI editor, we've got this LFO tool. So let's map, we can map one of these to, I think, I forget, Alt Z maybe, something like that. Alt Z, see if it doesn't complain. Okay, I'm gonna map this one to the tilde key or the apostrophe that's, you know, at the upper left corner of the keyboard. And then basically, this tool is so crazy. It's really awesome. Let's hit this. So it basically gives these handles that allow you to kind of move things around, to expand them. I think the different, it's possible that different buttons do different things. You can kind of warp things. I mean, this is just ridiculous. And then you can click outside of it to kind of let it go or whatever. I don't know if this is gonna work. So maybe it's up here or. So yeah, and then if you go down to here and click Alt Z, oh, I'm not sure actually. This is a little bit of a mess. I apologize. Let's go back here to see if I can figure out mouse editing. The apply to, that's, yeah, I have that one. Okay, it looks like this is for the LFO tool. There's another thing I want to do actually first to kind of show, let's see, is split items. Split item, split notes on grid. We'll just, I need to change the grid first. So let's put this at like 30-second notes and then we can run this. You could also map this to a key. That's really cool. So now we got a bunch of velocities here and there are some cool things that you can do in Reaper. Like I think it's Control Shift left. Yeah, Control Shift left. This gives you the like FL Studio style Control Shift left click where you can draw stuff like. So that's cool, but I did figure out, so let's select these and then press our, what is it? Alt Z. And now we've got this LFO tool, which is crazy. Okay, so if we change the rate of this, oh boy. We can, oh yes, we can set the rate here. You can also, I kind of want to reset this just because it looks, oh, here we go. All right. So you can actually make a velocity LFO. And then you've got all these options about the amplitude. It can, you know, set this, I think, Can you click the whole thing? I'm not actually sure. I guess not. So, but if you've got, I mean, this is just total crazy options here. Okay. So let's say that we like that or whatever. And then the same thing here. What did I hit, the tilde button? You can do the same thing with this kind of mouse editor, like down here, which just, okay, this just blows my mind. I mean, it really, like, if you thought FL Studio was great for this kind of thing, like, this is wild. Okay, so like that's our thing. So and then yeah, we can click out of here and. Okay, let's talk about one other thing. This I have set to route to the GS wavetable synth, which is fine, but there is a lot of latency involved, and so I might recommend installing like the base MIDI VST with the MSGS sound font, or maybe just use the Yamaha SYXG50. So this will work with a with any GM stuff. It doesn't sound like the Microsoft MIDI synth, you know, sounds a little bit better. And it would respond to the XG init sysx message. So that's one that you could program in, and then, you know, you could use things like reverb, chorus, etc. So here's the XG program sysx. I don't know if you need it, but it's usually a good thing to put in the beginning of a MIDI if you're going to be using the Yamaha XG extensions. So I hope this made some sense, and I hope this got you kind of excited to do this. I think this is really cool. It's definitely been really inspiring to work with. And just quickly, what I would do if I were going to put this, if I were going to use the Yamaha VST, I would take this routing off, and then I would open the effects and put in the SYXG50, and then you've got that here, and then basically this doesn't really do very much. I mean, there's a little setup thing, but you don't really have to do anything, so that can just kind of sit in the background, and then it's a lot more responsive, especially if you're going to be playing stuff. The latency is probably going to be a lot better. And so the other options would be something like, I think there's one called Virtual MIDI Synth, although I might be having that confused. I think that allows you to use any VST as a Windows MIDI synth, but base MIDI VST works. You could do something like run Fluid Synth and route the MIDI to that. But yeah, these are probably the best options, especially if you're on Windows. And then, of course, you know, the one thing you can do, actually, I'm not sure if this lets you, but yeah, I don't know. This is basically the workflow that I've had. Use the action list. I've been, you know, doing a lot of like inserting note at mouse cursor type stuff. So it's pretty great for that, because you can just kind of sit here and just move the mouse around and, you know, do your inputs here and kind of tweak stuff there. There are a couple other shortcuts. Holding shift and using the mouse wheel will adjust the note velocity. You can kind of see it working here. If I had my actual mouse set up correctly, it would be working a little better. Maybe I'll remake this video. It's a little bit doubtful though. So I hope you enjoyed this. Please let me know if you have any questions. I'll post the links in the description to the web pages as well as to the GM template. And I hope this allows you to get started with MIDI, because I've been having a lot of fun with it. So yep, that's all. Happy MIDI making.